Hello everyone and welcome to another JavaScript Mastery video. Today you're going to build and deploy a professional Next.js landing page. I'm talking full-fledged, beautifully designed, extremely fast website that you'll be able to show to your friends, potential employers, and share it on your portfolio. Let's see what this is about. We have a nice header. By the way, this is a startup landing template. You can see their logo on the top. They offer amazing Next.js templates. Then we have some SVGs action below. You can see this blue and yellow lines. We also have the features section with some nice icons, as well as the services section with a clickable video iframe. Below that, we have some more features, SVGs, and icons. Finally, we have this cool step-by-step explanation of the product segment. And below that, a really important part of the website, and that is a beautifully designed pricing section, where users can choose between monthly and annual plans. Every website also has to have a simplistic theme section with social media links. And just before the end, we have this extremely clean testimonial section that you can slide around. And finally, to finish it off, we have a simple footer. Of course, all the links at the top are scrollable, so you can click there and immediately get to a specific part of the website. As you can see, this is a complete product, a fully functional, beautiful, single-page website ready to be deployed. We're using a placeholder product as the topic for this website, but of course, you can change all the content to accommodate your needs. You can use it as a development portfolio, maybe as a business website, or you can think of absolutely anything that makes sense to you and that makes you happy. At the end of this video, to do this website justice, we're going to deploy it using extremely fast hosting provider called Hostinger, but more on that later. Before we begin, let's discuss the benefits of Next.js. Next.js is an extremely popular framework, so-called the React framework for production. Next.js has the best-in-class developer experience and many built-in features. For example, it has an intuitive page-based routing system. It has pre-rendering, static generation, and server-side rendering. It also supports automatic code splitting for faster page loads. And finally, it has built-in CSS and Sass support and support for any CSS in JS library. Don't take my word for it. Let's take a look at Next.js Showcase. As you can see, Next.js is used by some of the biggest names in the industry: Netflix, TikTok, Twitch, Hulu, and even Nike. Before getting into Next.js, you should be familiar with JavaScript and React, therefore making those a prerequisite for this video. There are so many benefits of using Next.js opposed to just using plain React for this specific website. First of all, SEO, search engine optimization, is going to be so much better using Next.js. Secondly, Next.js is going to make this website extremely fast. And when I say extremely fast, well, take a look. I'm going to click refresh, and if you blinked, you might have missed it. That's it, it loaded. Of course, Hostinger's hosting is going to play a major role in making it even faster. Now, without any further ado, let's get started with building this amazing software. To support this video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. Since this is a big production-ready website, it has a lot of code. For that reason, I created a starter folder that you can download, and then we can start from the same page. But don't worry, I didn't code out the entire thing. We're going to do that together. So, to download the folder, go to the description of this video, click the link, and then here on the top right, you can click download. Once you download it, you can find your zipped folder, and then we're simply going to extract it. The second thing you can do is open a code editor of choice. In this case, I'll be using Visual Studio Code. I have an empty Visual Studio Code window, and I'm simply going to drag and drop this folder right in here. If we expand it, you'll see that this is the starter code for our Next.js application. But don't worry, we're going to go over all of these files. Let's first install all the necessary dependencies. Instead of installing them manually, in this case, they're already included in our package.json. And as you can see, there are quite a few. So to install those dependencies, let's run npm install, or you can install them using yarn as well. Once the projects are installed, we can run npm run dev. This is going to start the Next.js development server. It's not npm start as it is in React, it's just a bit different, npm run dev. As soon as you do that, you'll see that the server has started on localhost 3000, so let's go ahead and open it. In the browser, you can see that we have simple headings for all the sections that we're going to have. So it's a clean slate. Nothing is in here, we're going to code it out. Before we go ahead and completely build this website out, let's first get the hosting that we're going to use later on in the video. Hostinger is my personal recommendation. It has great price to quality ratio, extremely fast servers, and most importantly, 24/7 chat support. Many times I was stuck and I couldn't deploy a website, but thankfully they have chat support, so you can just contact them and they're gonna solve your issue for you. Let's see what is being offered here with some of the hosting plans. Hostinger's plans are extremely competitive. I mean, $1 a month for hosting for one website, and you get free SSL certificate. That means that you're gonna have HTTPS security. If you think you're gonna have a bit more visitors, like 25,000, then I would definitely go with premium hosting. And in this case, that's what I'm gonna use with this website. But that's not all. Since I've partnered with Hostinger, they decided to give all of you guys a special discount code. All that you have to do to get that discount is go in the description and click the link. There, you'll also be able to find the discount code. So now let's go ahead and select our single shared hosting, for example, just so I can show you where you can enter the discount code. While we're in here, let's scroll down, and right in here, you can enter the JavaScript mastery discount code. That's going to up your discount even more, so you'll have a better deal. Once you're done with these steps and you have your hosting, you can then sign in into your account, and then at the end of this video, we're gonna use that hosting to deploy our extremely fast website. Now let's go back to the code. As you can see, the starter code looks quite familiar. We have a README with just some basic information about our project. We have a package.json with a package log.json. We have a next.config.js. This is one special file. In here, we can install all the necessary plugins that we need for our Next.js application. In this case, we're using optimized images. Then we have a jsconfig.json. In here, we're simply setting source src as our base directory. That way, we won't have to do //src/ something. This file allows us to simply do something like / something. That's it. And then we have all the usual stuff like public, where we have favicon and sitemap, node modules that handles all of our dependencies, and the .next folder, which Next.js automatically generates. The magic happens in the source folder. If I make this a bit bigger so that you can see, we have quite a few folders here. We have assets, and these assets are going to hold all of our images, SVGs, and everything that's visual that we can put onto our website. Then we have our components. In the components, the only thing I've prepared for you are blank components. For each special component, like for example image, I prepared for you only the actual function component, nothing else. We just have the return, and in some components, we're also gonna have the styles. So if we go to, for example, feature card, you can see we have our component there. And then below, we have all the styles for our specific component. There are going to be quite a lot of styles in this application, and we're not going to write them by hand because we have to be really precise with this website. After all, it is a production level website, so we have to have a lot of precise paddings, margins, widths, and so on. Because of that, all the styles will be generated for you just below each of these components. That way, we can focus on things that matter, writing out the logic and creating the structure of the website. You might notice that some styles look a bit weird, like MR, which is margin right and margin left. That is because we'll be using the theme UI. Theme UI is a great design framework that's going to make it simpler for us to create that nice looking website you saw at the start of this video. But again, for this video, you don't have to know it since I'll provide the styles for you. Besides the components, we also have the pages folder. In here, we have our index.js. This is the main file where we import all of our sections, and then we're going to display them right in here. As you can see, we're going to have a banner, key feature, service section, feature, core feature, workflow. We're going to code this all together once we come to the sections folder. The underscore document is a special Next.js file where you can simply override some of the HTML or body tags. So in here, we can provide a language for our website. We can also get some initial props, change the body, import some scripts, and so on. Finally, our underscore app is also a special Next.js file where you can simply import everything that you're going to have access to globally. So in here, we're importing some CSS for our carousel, for our modal, and so on. With that said, we can jump to sections part. And in here, we have components for all of our sections. Again, it's going to be similar to our components. All the imports are prepared for you. We're going to code it out, and then we're going to use the styles which are written down below. Finally, below our sections, we have a theme folder with just one file, which is our theme. In here, we have the colors for body color, primary color, secondary color. We have all of our colors, modes, breakpoints, fonts, and so on listed in this file. But again, since styles are written for us, we don't have to worry about that. In this video, we're going to focus on logic, the thought process, and creating the layout of that great website you saw at the start. I know, you don't want me to continue explaining things. Let's close this and let's start creating our first section. It's going to be easier for us to work on this website if we open our Visual Studio Code next to our browser. That way, we'll be able to see the changes we make live. To do that, I simply put our localhost 3000 on the right side of the screen. Now, let's start. We can go from top to bottom, starting with the header. To create the header, we're going to go inside of components and then the header folder. Inside of here, we have the header.js file. Now, as you can see, we have our component right there with some imports, and we also have some stylings with positions. So let's focus on creating the header. To create the header, we're going to use some of the components from theme UI. In this case, that's going to be a container, flex, and a button. So let's start with that. We're going to remove this h1 from here, and immediately inside of there, we're going to create an HTML5 semantic tag. That's going to be our header. In theme UI, we can provide special styles by saying sx and then provide the specific styles. So we can say styles.header. And just in this case, since we also want to provide some class names that we are passing as props to our header, we can say class name is going to be equal to class name. Let me show you where these class names are coming from. For that, we have to see where we're calling our header component. So I'm going to search for our header. If we search for our header component, we should see it right there inside of our layout. As you can see, we have the header here, and we're passing a different prop depending on if it is sticky or not. So sometimes we want to have a sticky header that sticks to the top, and sometimes we don't want that. So in this case, we're just providing this simple class name right there so we can focus on that. One last thing for our header is going to be the ID, and the ID is simply going to be header. Now, let's continue with creating the header. Inside of there, we're going to have a container tag. That container is going to have the sx equal to styles.container. So if you can see, this is going to be a standard practice that we're going to do. We're going to say sx is equal to, and then we can mention the styles that we have just below. Styles.header, styles.container, and so on. Below that, we're going to have a logo. So logo is going to be a special component that we're going to create. But for now, let's just leave it here as a self-closing tag. That logo just has to have the source of the image, and we are already importing it from here. We're going to use the logo dark. Below our logo, we're going to have a flex container. In theme UI, that is just flex. And we can provide the as parameter, and that is going to be our nav. So it's going to serve the purpose of a nav, which has to be a string. In that flex, we can also provide the styles, so we can say sx is equal to styles.nav. Finally, inside of our flex, we're going to have all of our menu items. Of course, we could write them right here, like menu item 1, and then menu item 2, and so on, but we can already have them in a specific array. And in our case, as you can see, we have menu items, which is in the header.data. So if I open this and go to header.data.js, you can see that we have an array which simply has some objects with paths and labels for some specific navigation bar sections. In this case, we have home, features, pricing, and testimonial. If you want to, you can add new navigation items just by following this structure and adding a new object with a path and a label. But now that we know how our menu items look like, we can go back in our header and we can map over them. So we're going to open a dynamic block of code and we can say menu items. Again, menu items is that same array you just saw. We're simply importing it in here. And we can say dot map. We're going to map over each menu item. And we're also going to get the index of a specific menu item. Once we do that, don't put the curly braces, but simply parentheses because we want to instantly return something. And what are we going to return for each menu item? It is going to be a link. It's not a self-closing tag. We're going to have something in there, but it is a link. And as you might notice, this link is coming from a library called react-scroll. So if we find react-scroll on npm, you'll see that it's a package with 360,000 weekly downloads. And basically all that it does, let's open a code sandbox. All that it does is it gives you different links that you can click. So let's expand this just a bit. And if you click it, you can see it scrolls to a specific part of the website. There we go. As you click it, it scrolls. So that's the only thing we want to do. You'll often notice that in the production level websites, you don't have to code everything by hand. You just have to know that there is a package that does that for you. Don't reinvent the wheel. In this case, that's exactly what we are doing. Now we're using that link that's going to scroll to a specific part of the website for us. So let's add all the necessary properties that it needs. And again, if you need to know which properties does it need, definitely read the documentation. That's something that I want to teach you. We're going to use a lot of different dependencies and we need to learn how to read the documentation. In that same npm page, you'll see props options part. I can make this even a bit bigger for you. And as you can see, we have all the things that you need to pass to it. We have to have the active class, which is a class applied when element is reached. So let's add that active class. Active class is going to be equal to just active. That's one of the styles we'll be using. Then we have to have the to property, where we're going to go, and that is going to be the path. Then we have to have the spy, which is the make link selected when scrolling it at its target position. So it has to be selected. That's the spy, and that's going to be equal to true. We can also make it smooth to animate while scrolling, so we can say smooth is equal to true. And let's also make an offset. Offset is going to be something like minus 70 pixels, just to bring it a bit up of the div we want to scroll to. Duration can be something like 500 milliseconds. And the key, because we need to have a specific key, is going to be equal to I, a specific index. Finally, what is this link going to say? Well, remember, we have that label. So in this case, this path and this label are coming from our menu item. So we can do menu item dot path and menu item dot label. If we save that and go back, we should already see something on our Next.js website. We don't see anything yet because right now our website is small, so it's displaying a mobile navbar. But if we make it just a bit bigger, we should be able to see the navigation bar we just created. There we go. You can see home, features, pricing, testimonial. Looks really clean right out of the box. Below our flex, we're going to have a button. That button is going to have a class name, and that's going to be something like donate __ btn. It's also going to have a variant, which is going to be equal to secondary. And it's also going to have the area label, which is going to be equal to get started. Now let's save it and see how does it look like. As you can see, our button is right there. But of course, let's put something in it, get started. Nice, this is our call to action. And as you can see, we have a nice navigation bar with this get started button right in here. Also, remember that we just imported this logo in here, but we haven't yet created the component to display the logo. So now would be a good time to do just that. We're going to go to our components, and then in here, we're going to find our logo. As you can see, right now, it is just a simple h1 tag, but we want to add something to it. So what are we going to add? We're going to make our logo a link, but this is going to be a special link component we are yet to create. As you can see, we are importing it from our own components. Our link is going to have a path, which is going to be just slash because it's the main homepage. Then we are going to provide some styles. sx is equal to, and then let's do them inline because we don't have a lot of styles to write. We can say variant is going to be equal to links.logo. Then we're going to set a display to be equal to flex. Then we can specify a cursor to be equal to pointer. And finally, we can say margin right, MR, is equal to 15. Great. Finally, our link needs all the other properties as well. So we're going to open a pair of curly braces and we're going to say ... rest. In this case, we're simply spreading all the properties that we are receiving in our logo. Great. Finally, what is our button going to say? Well, it's going to display an image. So inside of here, we can specify that image tag from the theme UI. It is going to be a self-closing tag this time. And in there, we need to provide the source of our image. So we can say src is equal to src because remember, we're already passing that source as a prop to our logo. So if you take a look, we're passing a prop of logo dark. And then in our logo, we are simply using that source. Finally, let's provide an alt tag for people with screen readers. And let's say something like Next.js landing page logo. If we save that, you'll see that we still don't see the image. And that is because we have to create this link component. So that's going to be our next step. We're going to go inside of our link right in here. And as you can see from here, we're exporting two different things, a nav link and a link. So let's go ahead and create the code for them. The process is going to be straightforward. For the link, we're going to use the same link from theme UI, as you can see right there. And I know that this window is a bit too small, but as soon as we're done with creating the desktop header, I'm going to expand our code window a lot more so you'll be able to see what's happening. But from now, we're simply importing the same old link we used, and we're just renaming it as a anchor tag because our component is already named link. So inside of here, we're going to use that link from theme UI. And in our link, we're going to spread all the other properties we're passing from our component. So that's going to be ... rest. As you can see, we have them right in here. Finally, we're going to leave an href, and that href is simply going to be the path which we are also passing in each specific link. Finally, this component is going to display a dynamic block of code. We can say if there is children. So if there is children, then we want to show that children, else we want to display the label we're passing into that anchor tag. So basically we're saying if there is a logo, display the logo, but if we pass anything different into this, like a text, then display that text. And as you can see, our logo appeared, and if we expand it, we basically have our entire header with the logo, a few links, and a button. The second thing we have to do is we have to create a mobile logo. As you can see, this one is going to disappear, and now we have to create something on mobile devices. So that's going to be our next step. Just below our button, we're going to create a new component called mobile drawer. That mobile drawer is a self-closing component that we are going to create. As you can see, we're importing it from /mobile drawer. So if we go to our code, in here, you'll see that we have mobile drawer right in here. So in here, you'll see some imports. We'll see all the social media icons. And if we scroll just a bit down, you'll see that in here we have our component. The logic for creating a mobile drawer is usually in most apps a bit more complicated because you have to account for a lot of things. when is the mobile drawer gonna open, from which side, how is it gonna look like, on which viewports, and so on. But let's code it together. Inside of here, we're gonna wrap everything with a drawer component. And that drawer component is a component that we have to create. If I scroll up, you can see that drawer is coming from components drawer. So maybe it would make most sense to code out that drawer first. So we're going to go here, not in header, but this time in drawer, and we have to code it out. We have a lot of props coming into it, but nothing that we're displaying yet. So let's code out that drawer. Let's remove the h1 and let's wrap everything with a React fragment. So this is a normal fragment that we're importing from React, as you can see on the top. Inside of our fragment, we'll be using another dependency. This one is called RC drawer, basically React drawer. So if you open the npm page for that, you'll also see that it has 500,000 weekly downloads and that it's quite straightforward to use. You just have to import it and then specify all the menu children inside of the drawer. That's going to render a nice looking drawer. And in here, you can see all the props that you need to pass to it. But in this case, I'll be leading you and we're gonna do it together. So let's start with creating our drawer. That's going to be RC drawer. And in there, we have to pass quite a lot of props. Those props are going to be as follows. Is the drawer currently open? So we can say open is equal to open. And you might be wondering, where is this open coming from? Well, you can see we're passing it as props into our drawer. So if we go to our mobile drawer, scroll down a bit, we're gonna pass it right in here into this drawer, but more on that later. I know this can be a bit confusing, but I'll try to repeat everything as many times as possible, and I'll try to do it as slowly as possible so that everything sticks. We also have to have the onClose. When are we going to close that specific drawer? And that is going to be equal to toggle handler, which again, we're gonna pass from our mobile drawer. And you might also be wondering, why are we passing everything and then coding everything here? Then in here, we'll also have to pass everything. What is the point of that? Why not just code it once? Well, the thing is, once you have a drawer in your application, most likely you're gonna use it multiple times across the application, but you're gonna have to pass different parameters. And this is the exact reason why we're doing this. With that said, we also have to provide a class name. Our class name is going to be dynamic. We're gonna open a pair of curly braces, and then in here, we're gonna specify a class name of drawer. So this is going to be the class name that we're always gonna have in there. But we can also have one additional one that we pass through props. So we can say if there is class name, if there is that additional class name, then show that class name. Else, if there is no class name, then show an empty string, just like this. And finally, we also have to call the .trim on this string, because usually there can be some issues if you don't trim it, if there is a class name. Great. Okay, moving forward, we're gonna have our width, which is going to be equal to the width property. We're also gonna have a placement property to know where to place that drawer. We're also gonna have a handler, which is going to be set to false in our case. Then we're gonna have the level, which is going to be equal to null. And finally, we're gonna have the duration, that's going to be the animation duration, that's going to be equal to 0.5 seconds, and this needs to be in a string. Finally, we're going to spread all the other properties that we pass by doing ... props. And these are all the props that we have to pass in our RC drawer. Now, inside of it, we can have another dynamic block code. In there, we wanna say if there is a close button, then we want to display the following block of code. And that is going to be a box, which is a simple div. Box is gonna have a property as div, so it's gonna appear as a div, and it's going to have an onClick property, which is going to be equal to toggle handler. It's also going to have the SX styles, which are going to be equal to close btn style. And inside of there, we're simply gonna say close button, but it has to be a dynamic block of code. Okay, great. Finally, below that close button block, we're gonna have another box. That box is gonna have the SX equal to drawer style, and it's also gonna have children in there. That means that whatever you pass into this drawer component, we're gonna display or render it as children. Now, finally, below our actual RC drawer, we're going to have one more box. And this box is going to have a class name that's going to be equal to drawer and then underscore underscore handler. It's also going to have a style property, and style is going to be equal to a display of inline block. And also it's going to have an on-click property, which is going to be equal to toggle handler. Great. Now inside of that box, we can simply say drawer handler. That's going to be a variable that we pass through our props. Now let's save that. And we are finally ready to go back to our mobile drawer, because there now we have a working drawer and we just need to pass all the props to it and make it mobile. To do that, we're going to expand this, and now we're going to pass all of these props. If you hover over it, you can even see what does it accept, because we just defined that. So we're going to have a width of 320 pixels. Then we're going to define that drawer handler, and that drawer handler is going to be equal to a box. So let's define a box that's going to have the sx styles.handler. And in that box, we're going to have the IOMD menu, which is simply an icon. That is a self-closing tag that's going to have the property of size equal to 26 pixels. Now, if we save that, we're still not seeing anything besides this small icon, a hamburger menu that looks really good right there. But now let's make it open and show us everything that we have. To do that, we're going to continue passing some props. One of them is going to be the open property, which is going to be equal to is drawer open. So open is drawer open. We're also going to have the toggle handler. And that toggle handler is simply going to set the state, is our drawer currently opened? So we can make it a callback function. And there we're going to say set is drawer open. And then to use the previous state, we cannot simply say no is drawer open. What we should do is create a callback function where we get access to the previous state. And then how can we toggle it? Well, you say no previous state or not previous state. And that's going to toggle it. We got an error right now, and that is because we have no state variable called isDrawerOpen or setIsDrawerOpen. So just at the top of our return, we're going to create a new useState field. That is going to be const isDrawerOpen and setIsDrawerOpen, which is going to be equal to useState. At the start, we're going to set it to false because initially we don't want our drawer to be opened. Now, if we save that, everything is back in action. And take a look. If we actually click this, we can see our drawer. You can see how it nicely animates and moves our entire website to the right side. But right now, we don't have anything in there, so let's continue creating the layout of our drawer. We also need to have a close button. So inside of there, I'll say close button is going to be equal to, and then in there, we can simply pass the IOMD close, which is a self-closing icon basically. We can set the size to be equal to 24 pixels, and we can also set the color to be equal to, and that's going to be #000000, which is pure black color. So if we now test it again, you can see we have this nice X button at the top. Finally, let's add some more styles to our navigation bar. So that's going to be drawer style is equal to styles.drawer. And let's add our close btn styles. So that's going to be close btn style is going to be equal to styles.close. If we save this, these are going to be all the props that we have to pass into our drawer. Now, if we open it up, you can see it slides nicely. It's a bit faster now. And we have this nice button on the right side. But now is the main part. Let's show our content inside of this drawer. Inside of our drawer, we're going to have a new package that we're going to use, and the name of the package is scrollbars. More specifically, if you scroll to the top, you'll see that it is scrollbars from react-custom-scrollbars. So let's see what that is about. I'm going to find it on npm. And as you can see, again, it has more than 150,000 downloads. They say that they provide frictionless native browser scrolling, native scroll bars for mobile devices, fully customizable, and so on. We're going to use this package to provide a native-like experience for our mobile drawer. With that said, let's continue with our code. Let's expand this a bit more. And right inside of that scroll bar, we're going to give a special property called auto hide to that specific scroll bar. And below, we have to have boxes to loop over all of our menu items. So let's do just that. Inside of the scroll bars, we're going to have boxes that are going to display our actual content. So we can create a box. This first box is going to have a sx styles.content. So inside of there, we'll be displaying content. And we're going to have one more box inside of this one. This box is going to have the sx equal to styles.menu. And finally, we can loop through our menu in there. If you remember correctly, we already had our menu inside of here, so we can basically copy and paste this entire part and then modify it just a bit. Let's go back to our mobile drawer and paste that code right into here. Let's see if we have to change something. Active class active, path is going to be the same, SPY correct, smooth, offset, duration, key, and label. All of this is going to stay the same. And finally, below this box, we're going to have one more box. So this is inside of the content box, but below the menu box. This box is going to have the sx equal to styles.menu footer. So let's go ahead and do that. This box is going to have one more box inside of it. And again, these boxes are just divs that we use to create a layout for our content. In here, we're going to have the sx of styles.social. We're going to have some social media icons in there. Let's create a dynamic block of code and say social.map. Inside of there, we're going to have a social item, and we're going to also grab the index. And again, let's use simply a pair of parentheses to instantly return something. So what is this social? Well, let's scroll to the top and you'll see that we have the array called social, and it's similar to our data for the mobile links. You can see that we have objects, and each object has a path where you can modify your link and the icon for that specific social media platform. Each social media link is going to be a box. That box is going to have the property as span. And then in there, we're going to have the key of I and also sx of styles.social.icon. Inside of that box, we're going to have our link, and our link is going to point to, and then we're going to provide a specific path. Also, inside of that link, we're going to show our icon. But where are we getting the path and the icon from? Well, we're going to be getting them from the social item. So just before the path and the icon, we can say social item, that path, and that icon. Let's see where this link is coming from. So if we scroll to the top, you can see link is coming from the old React scroll that we already used. Now let's save that, and that should be it for our entire mobile drawer. I know that this was a lot of work to just create a header, but headers, especially well-made ones and mobile-friendly ones, are definitely not easy. So if you take a look at this, we now have a great-looking mobile header. This is one of the best that I've ever seen. If we expand the website, you'll see that we have a nice desktop-looking header and no hamburger icon there, but if we collapse it to a mobile size, as you saw right there, and click it, it pushes all of our content to the right side. We have this close button with all of the links and also social media icons on the bottom as well. So far, so good. Again, header is one of the tougher things, so we had to spend a lot of time on it. But as we move forwards, things are going to go a lot quicker because all the other sections are actually, like it or not, easier than the header. So with that said, let's start creating our banner. We can find our banner if we go under sections and then banner. As you can see in here, we have a heading, but we have to transform it, add the code to make it into a real banner. Doing so is not going to be that hard. First, we're going to remove this h1, and then we're going to convert it into an HTML semantic tag called a section. That section is going to have sx, which we set our styles of styles.banner. And it's also going to have the ID of home. Inside of that section, we're going to have a container tag coming from theme UI. That container is going to have sx equal to styles.banner.container. Inside of that container, we're going to have a box, and that box is going to have the styles equal to styles.banner.content box. So content box. Inside of that box, we're going to have a heading like this, also coming from theme UI. And that heading is going to have the as property. So it's going to be as h1. And it's also going to have a variant of hero primary. So it's going to be our primary header. Inside of there, you can have your headline, but in our case, let's do something like top quality digital products to explore. That sounds like a nice heading. So if we do that, as you can see, we immediately get this nice SVGs because we have them under styles for this banner container, and we have our top quality digital products to explore. Below that, we're going to have a text property. So we can have text. Text is going to be as p tag, so that's going to be as a paragraph. And it's going to have a variant that's going to be equal to hero secondary. Inside of the text, we can say something like check out our website to find great software products and deals. Something like that, just a placeholder text. And there we go, it appears right there. Seems to me that we need to add just one more sentence. So let's say if you need a website or a web application, this is the place to go. Great, that seems like a nice heading or a nice call to action. And finally, below our text, we're going to have one more button, and that button is going to have a variant of primary. So you can say variant is equal to primary, and we can say explore, or you can use a call to action called buy, explore, anything you want. As you can see, if we keep expanding it, it's going to look great for all the screen sizes. It looks even better on desktop. The text gets bigger, the secondary text also gets bigger, and our explore button is right there. I'm gonna pull this to the side now so we can continue. And just below this box, we also want to add one more box. This box is going to have the sx of styles.banner.image box. And inside of that box, we're going to have an image, which is again coming from theme UI. As the styles say, this box is going to have an image, which is again coming from theme UI. Inside of there, we can provide a source for our image, and that is going to be equal to banner img with a capital B. It's going to be a self-closing tag, and we're also going to have the alt tag, which is going to say banner. If we save it, you'll see that these SVGs with colors drop down nicely below all of our content and go behind our image. This image is basically displaying our software product. This could be anything. This could be your landing page or some of the websites you're building. In this case, it's a random product we're trying to market. But if you take a look, this looks so much better now. If I keep expanding it, you'll see that it looks great on all the screen sizes. Looks like a real commercial website already. You can see that we have this nice heading at the top with the Get Started button and the logo, and if we make it smaller, it also is fully mobile responsive. Great. I think that you can trust me now when I said that we spent most of the time working on the header. As we keep creating sections, it's going to get easier and easier. So let's keep doing it. Let's go to the next section, which is going to be the key feature. Let's open up our file explorer, and then under sections, you'll see key feature. Inside of here, if you scroll down, we first have the data for all of our features. That's just plain text, which you can change. You can change the image for each thing, and you can also change the title as well as the text. But for now, we're going to use that demo data, and let's scroll down, and then in here, we're going to code out the key feature component. The key feature component is going to be yet another section. All of these sections are actually just that, sections that have a specific ID. This section is going to have the ID of a feature. And then based on these IDs, we'll be able to scroll to a specific part of the website. You're already starting to get the hang of it. So my question for you is, what are the components for? Why do we have so many components if we already have the sections? Well, some sections are going to be more complicated, and then we can separate them into multiple components, which we're then gonna use. But for now, let's continue creating our key feature. Our section is going to have the SX equal to, and then double pair of curly braces. Variant is going to be equal to section.key feature. But this section.key feature has to be a string. This looks a bit weird, but that's how we're going to do it in this case with theme UI. Below that, we're going to have a container. And inside of that container, we're going to have a section header. So if you take a look at the top, where is that section header coming from? And this is the example of a component. So section header is a component that we have to create. So let's see, what are we going to do with our section header? Well, it is going to be a self-closing tag, just like this, and we're going to pass it two different props. First one is going to be our slogan, and then there, let's say, what's the function? And then the second thing that we're going to pass into it is going to be the title. In the title, we're going to say, meet the feature of our product. Something like that, just some basic text. So now we know that we are importing a section header that accepts two different parameters, a slogan and a title. Now let's open up our components, and then inside of there, let's find our section header. There it is. Our section header is going to simply be a box, and that box is going to have the SX equal to variant, again in a string, section header, like so. Inside of there, we're going to have a text element, again coming from theme UI, as you can see at the top. We're going to say as P, so it's going to be a paragraph. And then inside of this text, we're also going to have some styles. So I'm going to put this into multiple lines, and then we can say SX is equal to, and now we're going to have an object, and let's specify a few properties. First of all, a variant is going to be equal to a string of section header dot subtitle. Then below that, we're going to have a color, which is going to be equal to, and we're going to have a ternary. If we have isWhite property that is equal to true, then our color is going to be equal to white. Else, it's going to be equal to primary. So we have this one property called isWhite, and as you can see, we'll be getting that through parameters. So through props to this function. And as you can see, we'll be getting this isWhite through props of this function. And this is also one of the best ways to explain why does this part, this box with a text, need to be a separate component. Because we need it to be dynamic, modular. It has to change depending on specific parameters. We don't want to copy this every time, like here and here, and then simply change this from white, and in this case, let's have something like black. As you can see, this is a lot of duplicate code. We don't want that. We always want to call one same component, which is going to be something like section header, and then simply pass different props to it, like color is equal to white and color is equal to black, and so on. That's what makes React and therefore Next.js so popular. They're reactive. Finally, we can change the opacity. The opacity is going to be, if it is white, then we can say 0.7, else let's do 1. And inside of that text, we're simply going to show our slogan, which remember, we're passing through props. Below that text, still inside of the box, we're going to have a heading element. And that heading is going to be really similar to our text. We can even copy what we have above. Our heading is going to be as h2. It's not going to be a p. Variant is going to be section header dot title, and color is going to be, if it is white, it's going to be white, else it's going to be heading. And then the opacity we don't need here. Inside of there, we can use another prop that we passed in, and that prop is a title. So let's save that, and let's scroll down and take a look. This is what we built. Small text on the top that displays our slogan right there, and then we have a larger title that can be of different colors. This is what we just created. This is the section header that we are calling inside of our key feature. But the point is, this component is not only going to be called inside of this specific section, it's going to be called inside of multiple different sections. So we want to be able to reuse that thing so that we don't have a lot of duplicate code. I hope that makes sense. With that said, let's continue with creating our key feature section. Still inside of our container, but below our section header, we can create a grid component from theme UI. That grid is going to have the sx equal to styles.grid. And then inside of there, we're going to use that data that we mentioned. We have an array with 4 different objects, and each object is one specific feature. Again, feel free to change all the text that you want here. You're free to change anything. In our case, we're simply going to map over the data. To do that, we're going to open a dynamic block of code, and then we can say data.map. We have each data item, and then we're going to have an instant return for each one of these data items. What do we want to render for each one of these items? Well, it's going to be one more component. Our component is going to be called feature card column, and it's going to be a self-closing tag. So if we save that, as you can see, we have 4 different feature cards, but they have to be different. They have to have some icons, images, and also titles and texts. So we have to pass the data from our item into each one of these feature cards. So let's do that first, and then we're going to create the structure of our feature card. Our feature card, since we're mapping over it, we have to have the key, which is equal to item.id. Then we can also have the source, which is going to be equal to item.imageSRC. And then we can also have the alt tag, which is going to be equal to item.altText. I have a typo here. Let's fix that. Then we're also going to have a title, which is equal to item.title. And finally, we're going to have a text, which is going to be equal to item.text. And I'm not imagining these things. I'm not just putting them here. We actually have access to all of this data right inside of here. You can see each one of these data properties has the ID, image source, alt text, title, and the text. We're passing all of that data into our feature card. I just noticed it's not going to be feature card, it's going to be feature card column. These are different components. As you can see, it changed to feature card column, and let's find that specific component. There we go. Inside of the components folder, right here, we have feature card column, and we're expecting all the properties that we've already sent. So let's create the JSX layout for the feature card column. First, we're going to wrap everything with a box, and that box is going to have the sx equal to styles.card. Inside of the box, we're going to have an image, and that image is going to be a self-closing tag, and it's going to have a source. It's also going to have the alt text, and finally, it's going to have the sx equal to styles.img. If we save that, you should already see that we get 4 different icons. And again, this is all modular. If we go to our key features section, you can see that we are mapping over the data and that we are passing a different image source each time depending on which item we're currently. First one is performance, partnership, subscription, and so on. Okay, below the image, we're gonna have a box, and that box is going to have sx equal to styles.wrapper. Inside of that box, we're gonna have a heading and a text. So let's start with a heading. Our heading is going to have the sx of styles.wrapper.title, and we're gonna display the title that we've passed through props. As you can see, we're expecting it right here. Finally, below our heading, we're gonna have our text, and that text is going to have the sx of styles.wrapper.subtitle. And inside of that text, we can simply pass our prop dynamically as text. If we save that, we get all the data and the content visible right in here. Let's try it for mobile. As you can see, it scales amazingly for mobile devices. Looks really good with our heading and with our banner section. And if we try to expand it to desktop size, you can see this looks even better. We have our banner, our heading, and then we have our key features. To be honest, I'm really blown away with how good this looks. This is also the point where we can already test our scrolling of our heading. So if you click features, it scrolls to features, but if you click home, it smoothly scrolls to home, features, home, and once we do the pricing and testimonial, you'll be able to scroll across all of our single page application. Great, one more section done. Service section is going to be the next one. Let's find our service section under our sections. So let's scroll a bit down and let's find it. There we go, service section. We are again gonna have some dummy data with our services and our features, but below that, we're gonna have our component, which we're going to code together right now. Our service section is going to be yet another section. So let's create it. It's also going to have some styles that are equal to variant and then a string of section.services. Inside of the section, we're going to have a container. That container is going to have the styles equal to styles.container box. And whenever I say styles, make sure to write SX. That's just how we do styles and class names in Theme UI. With that said, inside of our container, we're going to have a box. And that box is going to have the styles equal to styles.thumbnail. Okay, our thumbnail is going to have the image and a button. So let's first start with the image, which is again a Theme UI component. This image is a self-closing tag. And in there, it's going to have the source src equal to service thumb as a thumbnail. And then the alt is going to be equal to thumbnail. Let's save it so that we can see how it looks like. Okay, there is our thumbnail image. And then below that image, still inside of the box, we're going to have a button. Okay, that button is going to have a few properties. So let's expand it. And the first prop is going to be sx is equal to styles.video btn. Below that, we're going to have the onClick, which is going to be equal to handle click. And finally, we're going to have the area label, and that area label is going to be equal to play button. Inside of that button, we're going to have a span element. And inside of that span element, we're going to have an icon of iOS play. Okay, this is an icon. So now if we save that, we're going to get an error because we don't have this handle click function. So just at the top, let's create const handle click is going to be equal to a callback function. So let's just create that arrow function. And it's going to accept the click event as a parameter. And then in there, we can say e.prevent-default because we don't want to reload the page. And we're simply going to say set video open equal to true. Okay, now if we save it, the error should go away. And if we scroll down, you can see we have this nice pulsating button that we can click. Right now, this button is not going to do anything, but let's add a bit more code and we're going to make it open up a video player. So just below this button, we're going to have one more box, but make sure that you're still in the first box we created. That box is going to have the sx equal to styles.shape_box. It's shape box. And inside of there, we're going to have an image. An image is a self-closing tag, which is going to have the src equal to shape pattern. And it's going to have the alt, which is going to be equal to shape. If we save that, let's try to expand it a bit. And you should see this nice pattern appear right there, but still our right side is a bit empty. So let's add another box to cover for our right side. I'm going to collapse this a bit and find the last closing tag of the first box. Just after that box, we're going to create one more box, which is going to have the styles equal to styles.content_box. So this is going to be the box for our content. Inside of there, we're going to have our own component called text feature. Our text feature is going to be a self-closing component, which is going to have a subtitle. In this case, we can make it equal to data.subtitle. Remember, the data is that static data that we have at the top of this component. And then we're also going to have the title, which is equal to data.title. Okay, so now let's check out what this text feature is. It's definitely a component that we need to create, as you can see right at the top. So let's open up our file explorer, go to components, and let's find the text feature component. It's the last component in the list. And if we click it, you can see that it's accepting a few parameters, or props, I should say. And we have the JSX of our component right in there. So how is it going to look like? Well, we're going to have a box. Our first box is going to have the sx equal to styles.card. Inside of the card, we're going to have yet another box, and this box is going to have the sx equal to styles.wrapper. That wrapper is going to have a text element as well as a heading element. So let's first create a text element. This text element is going to have the property as, which is going to be equal to p as paragraph, and it's going to have the sx equal to styles.wrapper.subtitle. And in there, we can render simply a subtitle, but it has to be in a dynamic block of code because remember, we're passing that through props. Below the text, still inside of the box, we're going to have a heading. This heading is going to be of a h2 type, so we can say as h2. And it's going to have the sx equal to styles.wrapper.title. Our heading is simply going to display our title, which we're again passing through props. If we now save that, you can see we're passing our services and business goal achieved with design to this component, which is then rendering them nicely. Below our first wrapper box, we're going to have a dynamic block of code. And then in there, we're going to check, do we have a description? If we have a description, then render the following block of code. So when you see this notion, description and something, that means if this is truly, if there is a description, then render whatever is in here. So what are we going to render if there is a description? Well, we're going to render a block of text. That text is going to appear as a paragraph, and it's going to have a class name of description, as well as the sx equal to styles.description. Okay, just like this. And then in there, we can render that specific description as a dynamic element. If we save that, you're going to notice that absolutely nothing changed. And why is that? Well, that's because we're expecting a description parameter or a prop. But if we go into our service section and scroll down, you'll see that inside of our text feature, we're passing in only the subtitle and the title. We aren't passing the description. And that's fully okay. Our components need to be modular. They can do something if you pass some props, and they can do something else if you don't pass them. So we're handling that right here. If we commented out our check and simply had our text, we would always have this empty block of code. And then even though if you cannot see it, it's definitely there. If I uncomment it, you can see it just goes away. Finally, we're going to do one more check with our btn name. We can also have a button in this component. And if we have a button, in that case, we're going to render a link. That link is going to have the href of btn URL and a variant of default. Inside of the link, we're going to have a button. That button is going to have a variant of primary, and it's also going to have the area label equal to btn name. And finally, what is the button going to say? Well, it's going to say whatever is in that btn name. Again, since in this case, in our specific service section, we're not passing a btn name, nothing is going to appear right away. But the second time we're going to use this component, we are going to pass all of these props, so these are going to render. Okay, let's continue with our service section. We are going to have a grid. So we're still inside of that second box, but below our text feature, we can create a grid component. And that grid is going to have sx is equal to styles.grid. Inside of there, we want to map over all of our services. So if you scroll to the top, you can see we have data, and then we have, I should have said features, not services, but here they are. We want to loop over all of our features and then display them nicely. So if we go inside of there, we can say data.features.map, and then inside of here, we're going to get each specific feature. And what do we want to render for each specific feature? Well, we're going to render a box. That box is going to have the sx equal to styles.card. And since we're looping over something, we also have to have the key, which is going to be equal to feature.id. Inside of that box, we're going to have an image. And that image is going to have the src equal to item.img_src as image source. It's also going to have the alt tag, which is going to be equal to feature.alt_text. And it's also going to have the sx equal to styles.icon. That image is actually going to be our icon. And I've noticed that I've typed item in here, but that item is actually the feature. So in here, I'm going to say feature.imageSource. Now let's save that. And if we scroll down or right in there, we should automatically see two of these features. But these features don't just need to have an image, they also need to have some content. So right below the image, we're going to create one more box, and that box is going to have the sx equal to styles.wrapper. Inside of that wrapper, as usual, we're going to have a heading, and we're also going to have a text. But let's first create the heading. Our heading is going to have the styles equal to styles.wrapper.title. And in there, we can say feature.title. So inside of here, we're simply rendering our feature.title. Below our heading, we're going to render our text. And our text is going to have the sx equal to styles.wrapper.subtitle, like this. And finally, it's going to say feature.text. If we save that, now we have the text, and we also have the title. Let's expand that a bit and see how it looks like on desktop devices. Looks really good. We have 4 of these features that we had at the top, and then in here we have this nice thumbnail with a button, and we have our services on the right side. The last thing that we have to do with this specific section is make a modal once we click this button, because the video needs to appear. So how can we do that? Well, to do that, just below this container, the end of the container, but above the section, we're going to create our modal video. Our modal video is going to be a self-closing component. And let's see where is it coming from. So let's scroll to the top. And as you can see, our modal video is yet another dependency or a special package that we are using. So I just Googled for react-modal-video. Let's open it up a bit. And as you can see, this one has not a lot of weekly downloads, only 17,000, but it's still a good package. The reason why this has only 17,000 is that we probably could have done this using normal HTML iframe really easily, but in this case, we decided to use react-modal-video just to make it even simpler. If I collapse this, you can see down below, the only thing we have to do is say modal video, provide some of the parameters, and it's immediately going to look good. And best of all, it's gonna work. So let's try to implement it. If we go down, there are only a few props we have to pass. The first one is channel. So we're gonna pass the channel equal to YouTube. And then secondly, we can say isOpen is going to be equal to video open. This is going to be a state field that we have to code out. Then you can provide your video ID. This is one of the things that makes this modal video even simpler to use, is that you simply provide the video ID of a specific YouTube video, and it's going to automatically play it. So video ID is going to be equal to, and then we can enter any specific video ID. To find a video ID, just go to any YouTube video, and then in there, click share. Once you do that, you'll get a link, and then copy everything after the last /. This here is going to be your ID. So we don't need the entire link, just take the ID after the last /. Okay, that's great. And now the last thing that we need is the onClose property. OnClose is going to be equal to, we're going to have a callback function, and then we can say set video open is equal to false. Of course, we don't yet have the set video open and video open, so let's scroll to the top, and then in there we can create a state field called video open. So const video open and set video open, that's going to be equal to use state, and then at the start it's going to be false. Great. Now we have our modal. Let's save it. And let's go back to our website to see if it actually works. I'm gonna expand it all the way there. Looks really good. I'm gonna click play, and our video opened up instantly. That's great, you can play it. We also have the close icon on the top right, or you can close it by simply clicking away, and that works beautifully. If we scroll down, you'll notice that the next sections that we have to cover are going to be the feature and core feature sections. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's open up our file explorer, go to the sections part, and we're focusing on the feature section right now. As you can see, we also have some dummy data, but this is the important part. Our feature section is going to use a few components we've already created. So let's start with a section. It is a section after all that has the sx equal to, and then we have a variant that's equal to a string of section.feature. Then inside of that section, we're gonna have a container, and inside of the container, we're gonna have a section header. Remember, this was one of the components that we've already created. It is a self-closing component that accepts a slogan, and it also accepts a title. We can go ahead and check it out by control clicking it and take a look. Section header component. We have a box with a text and a heading. We created that previously. So now we already have the JSX. We simply have to pass props. That's the power of React. Our slogan is going to be something like quality features. And our title is going to be amazing, useful features. I know this is not something that you would use on a real website, but for now, it's going to be more than enough. Below our section header, we're going to have a grid. That grid is going to have the sx equal to styles.grid. And then inside of there, we're going to map over this data. So it's an array with 4 pieces of data. We had something similar to that. If you scroll up, you'll see it right here. These 4 icons with the corresponding content are really similar to features that we're dealing with right now. So inside of that grid, we can say data.map. Inside of there, we get each data item. And for each data item, we want to show a feature card. Before, if you remember correctly, we had a feature card column. This now is just a feature card. So let's create that component. Let's find where a feature card is. It's right there. And let's see if it maybe has some differences or similarities to our feature card column. So if we open up our feature card column, we can see that it was a box with an image and yet another box inside of there. And our feature card is going to be incredibly similar. So right now, I'm going to copy this entire part from our feature card column, and we're going to paste it in our feature card. Okay, I just pasted it in there, and let's see if there are some things that we have to change. Nope, that's going to be it. So looks like that the difference between the feature card and the feature card column is only in the styles, but that's provided for us. So in this case, the JSX for feature card and feature card column is exactly the same. With that said, we can go back to our feature card. And if we just save this, we of course have to pass some of the props into it. So which props are we going to pass into our feature? Well, as before, we have to pass a key, which is going to be equal to item.id. We also have to provide the image source, which is going to be equal to item.img src. Then we can provide the alt tag, which is going to be equal to item.alt-text. And we're going to have a title, which is going to be equal to item.title. And finally, text, which is going to be equal to item.text. If we now save this, you can see that we get more of these features, but this time they are not in a column. We can see them in a nice looking grid 2 by 2. Quality features, amazing useful features, whatever you want to call it, looks good, feels good, and you can change the content, of course, just by going to here and then changing the text, the title, and so on. So our features were quite easy because we already had the components done, but the next part is our core feature. So this is a feature that we really want to emphasize. So let's head to the core feature section. And inside of there, you can see we have the data for the core feature, but we are yet to code out the component. Our core feature is going to be similar to what we had so far. It is going to be a section, more specifically, a section that's going to have the sx equal to variant, and that's equal to section.core feature in a string. Then we're going to have a container to center it all. That container is going to have the sx equal to styles.container box. Inside of our container, we're going to have our box, and that box is going to have the sx equal to styles.content box, just like this. Inside of that box, we're going to have a familiar component that's called text feature. If you remember correctly, this is the component that we've used before. We simply have to provide some of the parameters to it. Let's see where did we use it before. So if I open up our search and if I search for text feature, you can see that we've used it under service section. So if we go right there into our service section, if I remember correctly, that was this part. There we used a text feature. And in there we passed only a subtitle and a title. Inside of here, we're gonna pass a few more props. So in this case, we're gonna pass everything that we built this component for. Remember, subtitle, title, description, and the button name. So let's see what is it gonna be. Our subtitle is going to be equal to data.subtitle. Then we're gonna have a title, which is equal to data.title. And then again, all of the data is coming from right here at the top, just so we don't have to hard code it. Then we have a description, which is equal to data.description. Then we have a btn name, which is equal to data.btn name. And then we have a btn URL, which is equal to, you guessed it, data.btn URL. Great. If we save this and scroll down, we should immediately see this text feature. Not only do we have a title and a text, we also have a nice looking button. Finally, below this box, we're gonna have one more box, which is gonna have the styles of sx is equal to styles.thumbnail. Inside of there, we're gonna have an image. An image is a self-closing tag that's going to have a source, which is equal to feature thumb, which is a feature thumbnail, and the alt is going to say thumbnail. And just below that, we're gonna have one more box. This box is gonna have the styles equal to styles.shapebox. And inside of our shape box, we're gonna have one more image. This image is again a self-closing tag that's gonna have the src equal to shape pattern, and it's gonna have the alt prop equal to shape. If we now save this, we get this nice shape below the image. So now let's see the desktop view. There we go. We have the image with the shapes on the right side with all the core features and the button on the left side. Looks good to me. We still have quite a few sections to do. We have workflow, package, which is actually pricing. That's gonna be one of the more difficult sections because it has a lot of moving pieces. Then we have a team section, testimonial card, and finally a footer. But if we just scroll to the top of this website, you can immediately see how this is slowly starting to come together. It looks really good. We can scroll to different parts of the website. It seems well thought out. We can click there to get a specific video. We can scroll to see more features, and we have some nice call to action buttons right here. I'm not gonna keep talking anymore. Let's code out the remaining sections. Next section on our list is the workflow. So let's open up our file explorer and let's find a workflow section. Inside of here, as usual, we have some data. In this case, the data is going to be consisted of 4 different steps. So if we scroll down, you can see the workflow part right there. And as usual, that is going to be a section. Our section is going to have the style equal to styles.workflow. Just inside of there, we're going to have a container tag. And then inside of that container, we're going to have a section header. This is a component that we've used many times so far. Our section header is going to have a slogan. And in there, we can say absolutely anything. Let's try to copy the things that we had in our last one. And that was something like this. What's the function? And then inside of our title, we can do the same thing, meet the feature of our product. Again, doesn't really matter what's in there. The only thing that matters is that we know how we can replace that and we can make it custom for our own specific needs. There we go, our section appeared, and opposed to the last section header we used, in this one, we're also gonna provide one extra parameter, and that is white. We're gonna set the property isWhite to be equal to true, and that way you can see that our colors have changed. And why is that the case? Well, remember, inside of the section header, before we added these specific styles that correspond to that specific property. If it's white, then we're gonna lower the opacity, and we're also going to make the text white. We're also gonna do the same thing for the heading. So beforehand, we created this component, and now we can use it in a few different use cases. And below that, still inside of the container, we're gonna have a grid property. Our grid is going to be sx is equal to styles.grid. Inside of that grid, we're gonna map over the data that we have declared at the top. So inside of there, logic.jsx block, data.map, and then inside of that data, we're gonna have an item. And we wanna show something for each one of these items. For each item, we want to show a box. That box is going to have the sx equal to styles.card, and we also have to provide a key because we are iterating over something. The key is going to be equal to item.id. Inside of that box, we're going to have one more box, and this box is going to have the sx is equal to styles.icon box. This box is going to be for our icon, and then in there, we can say something like this. We can open a dynamic JSX block. Inside of there, we can say a string, and then 0, and then item.id. As soon as we save that, you'll see that we get these bubbles with 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, and 0, 4. We can also just use the item ID, then it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4. This is just a stylistic preference. You can choose anything you want. But now that we have those numbers, let's also provide some content next to them. For that reason, I'm gonna create another box. That box is going to have the sx equal to styles.wrapper. And inside of that wrapper, we're gonna create a heading, and we're also gonna create a wrapper. That heading is going to have the sx equal to styles.wrapper.title. And then inside of there, we're gonna render our title by saying item.title. Now below this heading, we're gonna have a text property. That text is going to be really similar. sx is going to be equal to styles.wrapper.subtitle. I think we had used this before. And then inside of there, we're gonna say item.text. If we save that, you can see we have 4 different steps. They appear in a grid, but if we expand it, they're gonna appear in one row, and we even have these arrows in between them. Let's see how it looks like on mobile. So this is the mobile device, and they just appear one below another. Looks really clean. If you need to explain your software or your service to people, you can do that with this section in 4 easy steps. Next, we're gonna focus on the pricing or the packages section. This is a more complex component, but I'm sure we'll be able to do it, and I hope it's gonna make complete sense. I'm gonna close our tabs right there just so we clean our workspace a bit, and let's open up our file explorer and open the package.js. As you can see, the data for this specific file is quite long. We have about 200 lines of the packages. So what you can do is you can copy this and then extract it into a completely new file. For example, in the source file, you can create something like data. And then in there, you can create a file called package. And then you can simply import it right inside of here. Again, this is not something that you have to do, but if you want to use this project for your own purposes and you want to change all of these things, then it would be nice if you separated the data or the content from the JSX or the representation. With that said, let's scroll down and let's start creating the layout for our package. Inside of here, we are destructuring the monthly from the annual plans from the packages, and I also prepared for you all the slider parameters. We're gonna have to pass these parameters into the slider component we're gonna use. But for now, let's scroll down and let's start creating the layout. As usual, we're going to start with a section. Our section is going to have the ID of pricing. And we're also gonna have the SX equal to variant and then section.pricing. Below that, we're gonna have a container. And then inside of that container, we're gonna have a section header. We've already used our section header quite a few times. So by now you should know that it accepts a slogan. which is equal to, let's do something like pricing plan. And then it also accepts a title. And for the title, let's do something like choose your pricing plan. Great. Now, if we save that, let's see if it appears down there. There we go. Choose your pricing plan. And then below our section header, we're going to have a flex container. So you can simply say flex, and we can give it some styles. SX is equal to styles.button group. And then inside of that flex, we're going to have a box that's going to contain all of our buttons. Our box is going to have the styles equal to styles.button group inner. So this is going to be the inner part of our button group. Inside of the box, we're going to have two different buttons. So let me create it. And we're going to expand the first part of the component so that we can enter some props into it. Our button is going to have a class name equal to. Now we want to give this button a class of active if monthly plan is currently selected. If the annual plan is selected, then we want to remove this class from the monthly and give it to the annual plan. We can do that by using states. I'm going to scroll to the top of the component, and then there I'm going to create a useState field. We can say something like const, and let's name our state state. And we're going to use setState as well. That is going to be equal to useState. And in this case, our starting state is going to be equal to an object that contains the active, which is equal to monthly at the start. And also it's going to contain the pricing plan, which is going to be equal to all the data from the monthly packages. You can see we're setting the active to monthly and the active pricing plan to monthly that's coming from packages. What do I mean by that? Well, that is all the monthly data that you can see right in here. With that said, we also have to create a function that's going to handle pricing plans. So let's scroll down, and then in here, let's create a const handle pricing plan. That is going to be equal to a callback function. That function is going to take in a plan as a parameter, and then in there, we can have an if and else statement. We can say if plan is equal to annual. In that case, we want to set state, and we want to set it into an object. First, we're going to set the active to be equal to annual, and we're going to set the pricing plan to be equal to annual as well. So this works that we call the handle pricing plan, we specify the plan we want to select, and then in here, if the selected plan is annual, then we want to set the state to contain the annual plan. We can also put this in one line, like this. And then in the next line, we're going to simply say else. So if it's not annual, it has to be monthly. And then in there, we're going to copy this line. And we're simply going to change the annual to monthly, as well as monthly right in here. Great. Now we have the state, and we also have a function that can handle our plan. Let's scroll down. And now in here, we can choose whether this is going to have the class of active or not. What we can do is we can say state.active. If that is equal to monthly, then we're going to display a class name of active. Else, we're going to simply put a class as an empty string. Then we're going to have a type, which is equal to button. And we're also going to have the area label equal to monthly. Below, we also need to have an onClick, and our onClick is going to be equal to a callback function that is simply going to call handle pricing plan, and in there, we're going to pass in the plan we want to select. In this case, it's going to be monthly. And finally, what is our button going to say? Well, it's going to say monthly plan. Now, if we save that, you can see that our button appeared. Our second button for choosing the annual plan is going to be really similar. We can basically copy this button and paste it below. What do we have to change? Well, if the state.active is now annual, then we want to show class active. And in here, we're going to change the area label to annual as well. And finally, we're going to change the handle pricing plan to annual as well. And at the bottom, we're going to say annual plan. If we save that, you can see that now we have two different buttons. Currently, the monthly plan is selected, and with using states and the handle pricing plan function we created, we can now switch between those states. Looks really good, right? But now that we have this functionality working, below that, we want to display the pricing plans or the data for the pricing plans depending on the currently selected option. So just below this flex, we're going to create a box. That box is going to have the sx equal to styles.pricing wrapper. It's also going to have a class name equal to pricing __ wrapper. And inside of that box, we're going to have that carousel component we talked about. Let's see what this carousel is. I'm going to scroll to the top. And then there, you can see that we're importing carousel from react-multi-carousel. Let's see what that dependency or that package is doing. Again, as always, when you want to learn about something, simply Google that package and open up the npm page. This one has 62,000 weekly downloads, which is not bad. And let's read what it does. It's a production-ready, lightweight, fully customizable React carousel that supports multiple items and SSR, which is server-side rendering. And in this animation, you can see how it works. This is exactly what we want for our pricing plans. Of course, if you want to learn more, you can go read the docs and you can see what properties does it accept. But for now, since it accepts a lot of properties, I've prepared them all for you right in here. Let's go through them quickly. We're not going to have additional transform. We're not going to have arrows. Autoplay is going to be 3000 milliseconds. It's not going to be centered. It's not going to have any extra class names. Slides to slide is going to be 1, items 3, and so on. As you can see, these are just some of the parameters that you can pass to your slider to make it custom. So let's add those parameters right there. We can pass all of them into this component by opening a pair of curly braces. And then there we can spread. So ... slider parameters or slider params. Great. Now inside of there, to be able to see that carousel, we have to provide some plans. To do so, we can enter the dynamic JSX block. And then in there, we can loop over our pricing plans. That's going to be state.pricing plan. And this is going to be different depending on if we're currently selecting monthly or annually. And then in there, we can say .map. In there, we're going to get something like package data. And we can display something for each package data. What are we going to display? Well, it's going to be a box. That box is going to have the sx equal to styles.pricing item. And it's also going to have a key. Our key can be something like package data.id. Finally, inside of that box, we're going to render one more custom component that we are going to create. So it's going to be called price card. Once we create this price card, we also have to pass data to it. So we're going to say something like data is equal to package data. You might be wondering, what is this price card? But if we scroll up, you can see that we are importing that from our own components. So let's go ahead to File Explorer, to our components, and let's find our price card. There it is. And as you can see, it's accepting some data that we're sending to it. And then in here, we have to code it out. That price card is going to contain all the data about a specific pricing point, like a header, name, description, pricing unit, button text, and other options and points. Instead of this simple heading price card, let's create a real card. So inside of here, we're going to have a class name. And that class name is going to depend on if we have a header or not. So we can say if there is a header, in that case, may the class name be package __ card and active. And if we don't have a header, that means that it's not active. So we can simply display package __ card. And we're also going to provide some SX styles that's going to be equal to styles.pricingBox. Great, so what are we going to put inside of this card? Well, let's start with header. We're gonna say, if we have a header, then display a text component. So we're gonna have a text. That text is going to have the sx equal to styles.header, and then we're simply going to display a header. This might be a good time to check what we currently have. So I'm going to collapse this. And then inside of here, let's check out our current landing page. Really good. As you can see, we have 3 different cards. This one even has the suggested on it. But as you can see, they are pretty much empty. So let's add some content. I'm going to expand our code. And let's continue. Below the header, we're gonna have a box. That box is gonna have no styles, but inside of that box, just for layout purposes, we're gonna create one more box. This one is going to have a class name that is equal to package__header. It's also going to have the sx, which is equal to styles.pricingHeader. And that box is simply going to contain a heading and a text. So let's start with a heading. Our heading is going to have a class name that's going to be equal to package__name. And variant is going to be equal to title. Inside of that heading, we're simply going to display the name of our current pricing package. You can see this one is a free plan. And take a look. If we're on mobile, this carousel really comes in handy. Now we can scroll through different packages. That's why we use that dependency from npm. Let's make it even more meaningful and add a text below. This text is going to appear as a p tag, so we're going to write that there, and then inside of there, we're going to render our description. As soon as we save that, you'll see that now we have a small description, and we can keep scrolling to see more. Below this entire box, we're going to have a list. Let's see where our list is coming from. So if we scroll to the top, you can see that we're importing a list from ./list. That is yet another component. So this means that it's entirely possible to have components inside of components. So let's check out our list. Inside of our list, we're going to create a component that's going to loop through a few list items and display them nicely. So inside of there, we can start with a box. And then that box is going to appear as a UL. So we can say as UL, that stands for unordered list. We're also going to give it some SX, which is equal to, and then we're going to make some more dynamic styles. List style type is going to be equal to none. Then we're going to have a margin, which is going to be equal to 0, as well as the padding also equal to 0. And then we're going to spread all the parent styles. Right there, we're getting the parent styles through props. Inside of that box, we can loop over the items we'll be passing as props as well. So to do that, we can open a dynamic block and we can say items.map. Inside of there, we're going to get a specific item and we want to display something for each item. For each item, we're going to display a flex container. And let's add a few properties to that flex container. It's going to have a class name. And the class name is going to depend on one of the item's properties. So our item is going to have a few properties. It's going to have the icon. It's also going to have the text. And it's also going to have the isAvailable option on it. So if the isAvailable is true, then our class name is going to be open, else it's going to be equal to closed. Let's save that. And in the price card, let's make sure that we are passing something into our list. So in our list, we have to pass items equal to points. Again, points are coming from our data, as you can see right here. We just destructure them so it's easier to write it out. Our list is also going to have a child style, which is going to be equal to styles.listItem. Now let's save that and let's see if some list items have appeared. Well, right now we have an error because we haven't yet finished the list. Inside of here, I said that the item is going to contain these three properties, but they don't exist by themselves. So we have to say item.isAvailable. If we save that, let's see if something's gonna appear. I'm gonna scroll down. And nothing yet because we have nothing inside of the flex. So that's gonna be the next thing that we can add. Our flex is also going to have the as property and it's going to appear as an li, list item. Considering that the box is ul, this is going to be an li. Inside of there, we also want to have the sx, and then we want to spread all the child styles. Remember, we're passing over child styles from the price card through props into this component. And in here, make sure that you have double curly braces, and then you can spread it. Finally, since we're looping over something, we need to provide a key, and that key is simply going to be I that we can specify from a map. So the question is, what do we want to render for each item? And that is going to be an icon button. Okay, that icon button is going to have the sx, which is equal to styles.listIcon. And it's also going to have the area label, which is going to be equal to list icon, but that's going to be a string, of course, list icon. Finally, inside of the icon button, we can render the icon. And just below the icon, we can render the text. Again, both the icon and the text are coming from our item. So we can remove this and say item.icon and item.text. Let's save it, scroll down, and take a look at that. We have some content here and we have this nice checkbox. And as you can see, if the item is not available, then there's no checkbox, there is a cross right there. This looks really clean. Now let's close the list and let's continue creating the price card. We also have some more items below the list. Below the list, we're gonna have a text property. That text is going to have a class name, and that class name is going to be package__price. It's also going to have the sx, which is equal to styles.price. Finally, inside of there, we can display our price with unit. And we can also create a span element. And then in that span, we'll say / and then something like monthly. Let's save it and take a look. As you can see, that's $15 monthly. And as we scroll, it's going to be 24. And the first one is going to be $0 monthly. Finally, we're going to create another box for a button group. So we can say box. And then the styles are going to be equal to styles.button_group. We're going to have two buttons there. The first button is going to be like this, and we're going to pass a few props into it. The first one is going to be variant of primary, and also area label is going to be equal to button text. And finally, we're going to render that same button text inside of the button. So let's save it. And as you can see, we get start free trial. In this case, we have create an account. And in this case, we have create an account as well. It's dynamic because we didn't say simply here, start free trial. We passed in a dynamic attribute. Now, some of the options are going to have multiple buttons. So below this one, we're going to open a dynamic block. And we're going to say, if there is another option, in that case, render the following code. And that following code is going to be yet another button. That button is going to have a few props. The first one is going to be a variant. And the variant is going to be equal to text button. Then we're going to have a class name. Our class name is going to be equal to free__trial. And finally, the area label is going to be equal to another option. Our button is going to display the text of another option as well. That's dynamic. So if it appears, let's take a look. Okay, we can see it right there. If I hover over it, my mouse turns into a cursor, but it's white. We have to have it as black. Just to skip the debugging process, in this case, we're going to do it inline. We can say sx is equal to, and then open double pair of curly braces. We can say something like color is equal to black. And then if we save that, you can see that the button has appeared. We have a big create account button and then or start 14 days trial right there. The first button has only one button, so the text is not gonna appear. Now let's collapse our code editor a bit and see how do these options look like on desktop. There we go. Take a look at this. Choose your pricing plan. We can switch between monthly and annual plans. And if I click it, it instantly changes. This definitely looks good. We also have these text buttons below these ones, and these have a short hover animation. If you want to use this for selling something like a software or some products, you can definitely do so. I'm sure these are going to convert really well. I just noticed that we're not quite done yet with the pricing plans. If we scroll down, you'll see that we have this button group heading appeared from nowhere. Now, if we collapse this a bit and make it mobile, you'll see that we currently have just one plan, but there is no indication that there are others. So if I scroll, I can see them, but the user that comes to your website is not gonna know if he needs to scroll or not. For that reason, we have to provide some button group indication that he knows that he can go left or right. Let's do that right away. First, let's find where that button group is. Well, if we go to sections and then package, right in here under slider params, you can see that we have custom button group. That custom button group is our custom component. We can scroll to the top and we can see that we have our button group, which is coming from components. So let's head to components and go to our button group. Right inside of here, we have to create some nice buttons to simply explain the user that there are multiple plans that he doesn't immediately see if he's on mobile. These buttons are not going to be that hard. We're gonna start with a flex container. That flex container is going to have the sx, which is equal to of width, and then 100%. That has to be in a string. Then inside of the flex, we're gonna have a container. And inside of the container, we're gonna have a box. That box is going to be a button group. So we can give it the styles of styles.button group. And it's also going to have a class name, which is equal to a string of button __ group. Now in there, let's place two buttons. Our first button, if we create it like this, it's going to have an onClick property. OnClick, and in there, we're simply gonna pass previous. That previous is coming from props right there. It's also gonna have the area label that is going to be equal to previous. And then inside of there, let's use an icon, and that icon is going to be iOS arrow round back. Finally, we can copy this button, paste it below, and then this button is going to be our next button. So on click, we can go next. Area label, this shouldn't be area hidden. That was a typo. So I'm going to exchange this for area label. Is going to be next in this case. And then we can use the iOS round forward. That's going to be our icon. And we're done with the button group. Let's see how does it look like. As you can see, we have those two buttons that we can navigate around with. They don't look that good. They look like two basic buttons. And that's because in here, it shouldn't be styles.button. It should be styles.button group. That's going to be the correct class. And there we go. It instantly makes it look a lot better. Now the user knows that he can either click those arrows or he can manually swipe and get different plans. With that said, we can go back to our sections, and the last section we worked on was the package or the pricing section. This part is now fully done. Let's expand it one final time and see it in action. There we go. Here are our monthly and annual plans. We can switch between them, states are switching, we have the prices as well as the buttons and the secondary call to actions. We're getting close to the end of this great project, but we still have 3 sections to do. the team section, testimonial card, and the footer. So let's go ahead and get started with the theme section. Let's expand our code and find our team section. Under sections, there is a team section, and at the top, you'll see that we have the data for all 6 of our demo members. Of course, you can change the names, the titles, the designations, and you can add your own. You can add or remove members. But for now, we're going to use this data to create the layout and then to present it. Our team section is going to be similar to other sections we've created. It's going to be a section. Inside of there, we're going to have a container to center everything. Inside of that container, we're going to have our component called section header. As we've learned, our section header accepts a slogan. The slogan is going to be our theme. And then we can also accept a title. Our title is going to be the most qualified and talented individuals. Okay, now if we scroll down, you'll see that we have our theme and we have our header. But now let's add a grid with our actual team members. So just in here, we're going to create a grid component. That grid is going to have sx, which is equal to styles.grid. And then there, we're going to loop over the data. So we can say data.map. We're going to get each data item. And for each data item, we're going to show a theme card. This theme card is our custom component. So now let's see what do we have to pass into our theme card. We need to pass the source, alt text, title, designation, and social. So let's do that, and then we're going to create our theme card, which now doesn't do anything. First, we have to have a key because we're looping over something, and that can simply be item.id. Then we're going to pass the source of the image, and that's going to be item.imgsrc. Then we can pass the alt text. Our alt text is going to be equal to item.altText. Then we can also do the title. Title is going to be equal to item.title. Then we have the designation, and that's going to be like this. Designation is equal to item.designation. Finally, we have social, and we're going to have that as item.social-profile. Great. Now we're passing all of the required data into our theme cards, and now we have to go into our component and create the JSX layout to actually present it. Each one of our theme cards is going to be a box. That box is going to have the sx equal to styles.card. Then we're going to have an image. So you can create a self-closing image tag. It's going to accept the src equal to src. Remember, we're passing that through props. We're also going to have the alt, which is going to be equal to alt text. And finally, we're going to have the sx, which is equal to styles.member thumb, as in member thumbnail. If we save that, we should already see images for each one of our users. Below our image, we're going to have one more box. This box is going to have the sx of styles.info wrapper. Then we're going to have a heading. That heading is going to have a class name of info__name. And it's also going to have the sx, which is equal to styles.info-wrapper.name. And inside of there, we're going to display our title. Then below that, we're going to have our text. So we can create a text component. That text is going to have a class name, which is equal to info__designation. We're also going to have some sx styles. So we can say sx is equal to styles.info-wrapper.designation. And finally, in there, we're going to render our designation like so. Great. So now we're displaying the title and the designation. And as you can see, this already looks so much better. Finally, we need to display some of the social profiles of each individual person. To do that, just below this box, we're going to create one more box. And that box is going to have the SX, which is equal to styles.socialShare. We're also going to have a class name, and class name is going to be social__share. Inside of here, we're going to map over all of our social profiles. That's going to be social that we are passing as props right there. And we can say social.map. We're going to have an item. And for each item, we want to display a link to their social media network. So we can say link. We can provide a key, which is equal to item.id. We can also provide an href, which is going to be equal to item.path. And we can also provide a class name, which is going to be equal to item.name. Finally, inside of the link, we're going to display item.icon. If we save that, you should see all of the social media icons appear, and they're all clickable if you add the link to them. Great, our team section is now done. Let's see how it looks like on desktop. Take a look at that. Images are bigger. We even have cards when you hover over one specific person, and the social media links appear on the bottom right side. Great. Finally, we need a testimonial card and a footer. So let's knock these down. Our testimonial card is right in here. Let's expand our code first. And again, right there, we have some data that you can modify, you can change, you can make it completely your own. But let's go to our actual code. Right in here, we have to exchange our testimonial card. To make a testimonial card, we're going to use a carousel, the same carousel we used before. That's why it's good to use certain packages. You can reuse them over and over again, and then you can provide different props to them or params so that you can make them different to work with different use cases. Before, we had our carousel to swipe through these pricing offers, but now we're going to have our carousel to go through our testimonial cards. So to start off, we're going to create a section. This is the last section of our website, so it's going to have the ID of testimonial. Then we're going to give it some styles. SX is equal to variant, and then section.testimonial. Below that, we're going to have a container. In this container, we just want to provide some simple styles. So we're going to say CSS is equal to, and then again, one more object inside, text align is equal to a string of center. So we just want to center whatever is in there. In this case, that is going to be our section header, which is a self-closing tag that has a slogan, which is going to be equal to testimonial, like this. And we also have a title, and the title is going to be equal to meet client satisfaction. Okay, if we save that, you should see that right there we have testimonial meet client satisfaction. I just noticed that I misspelled testimonial a few times, so I'm just going to fix it right there and right there. That's going to add some padding to our styles. Below our container, we're going to have a box. And that box is going to have the SX, which is equal to styles.carousel wrapper. And inside of there, we're going to have our carousel. Again, a carousel is the component coming from the carousel package. And then there, we can pass all of the props by creating a dynamic block and then saying ... carousel params. This way, we're going to spread all of these params into our carousel. Finally, we have to map over the data that we want to display inside of our carousel. To do that, we can open a dynamic block and we can say data.map. There, we're going to have an item we're mapping over, and we want to display something for each one of these items. More specifically, we want to display a box. That box is going to have the SX equal to styles.reviewCard. And it's also going to have a key equal to item.id. I see that I'm missing an X right there. And inside of that box, we're going to have a rating component. Into our rating, we're going to pass a prop of rating that's going to be equal to item.review. And what is this rating? Well, if we scroll to the top, you can see that a rating is a component that we are yet to create. So if we go to the top of the components, there you'll see rating, and we have to implement the logic for the rating. Inside of our component, we're gonna accept a rating because that's what we passed. And then there we can create a new constant variable called total rating. And that's at the start going to be equal to an empty array. And then below that, we're gonna create a for loop. We're gonna say let I is equal to 0, I is less than 5, and then I++. Basically, we want to loop from 0 to 4, 5 times, to display the number of stars between 1 and 5. To do that, we're gonna say if I is less than rating, then we want to push something into the rating. So we can say total rating dot push. The thing that we want to push is going to be the li, like this. That li is going to have a class name equal to star, and it's also going to have a key equal to I. And inside of that li, we're gonna have the fa star, which is basically just the icon for the star. Then if the rating is higher than I, in that case, we're gonna have an else, and then we can say total rating dot push. And in that case, we wanna push an empty star. So we can say li, then we can provide a class name, which is equal to star O. And the key is going to be equal to I. And inside of there, we're gonna have the same fa star. Great. So now we're pushing stars depending on how many do we have in each rating, and we're pushing them to the total rating. Finally, we have to display that. So just at the bottom, we're gonna create a div. That div is going to have a class name equal to rating, and then inside of there, we're gonna have an unordered list, ul, and inside of that list, we're just gonna have the array of total rating, just like that. And as you can see, we already have 4 stars on the first one. If we keep scrolling, we get 5, 5, 4. This is really good. The rating is being displayed. Now we can go back to our testimonial and we can continue creating the content. Below our rating, we're gonna have a heading. This heading is going to be as h3, so it's gonna appear as a heading 3. And it's also going to have the sx equal to styles.title. Finally, inside of there, we're gonna use the item.title because that's the text that we want to display. If I save that, you should see modern look and trending design. Finally, below our heading, we also want to have a text component. This text is going to have the sx equal to styles.description. And in there, we're gonna render the item.description. If we save that, it should give us a bit more insights about what are the client's thoughts. Finally, so that we can know who wrote that testimonial, we can create one more div below the text right in here. That div is going to have a class name, and that class name is going to be equal to card footer. Inside of that div, we're gonna have yet another div, and this div is going to have a class name equal to image. Inside of the second div, we're gonna have the image tag, and the image is going to have the src equal to item.avatar. Finally, as the alt, we can put something like client image. If we save that, we should already see the image of the client who wrote that. Let's move ahead, and there we go. Now, below this image div, we're going to create one final div, and this one is going to have a class name right in here. Class name is going to be equal to reviewer-info. Inside of there, we're gonna have a heading. That heading is going to appear as an h4 tag, and also sx is going to be equal to styles.heading. Inside of there, we can render the item.name. If we save that, you can see that the name Danny here appeared we also have Danny, and looks like all the people are Danny. But now let's also add a text just below that. If we add the text, the SX has to be equal to styles.designation. Okay, and the actual info in there is going to be item.designation. If we save that, take a look. Now we have Dennis username, and they're all Denny Hill. Great. Let's expand it and see how does it look like. We have our great team section, and just below meet client satisfaction, we can scroll through these really smoothly right on desktop. Looks really good. We can also use the arrows, or if I collapse it for mobile view, again, we have only one per view, and we can keep scrolling to the right, or we can go back to the left, read the reviews, and take a look at our header. We can immediately get started if we are already convinced that your company is offering something good. Finally, the last thing that we have to do to make this fully complete is the footer. After we're done with the footer, we're gonna start with the deployment process. Our footer is just a component, so we can scroll up. In here, you'll see the footer data.js with all the links, and also footer.js file. Inside of here, as always, we're gonna implement the code for the footer. So let's start with the footer semantic HTML tag. Inside of there, we're gonna have the SX, which is equal to styles.footer. Finally, we're again gonna have a container to center everything out. And we're then gonna have a box inside of that container. That box is gonna have the SX equal to styles.footer.footer bottom area. Quite a long one. Then inside of there, we're gonna have a link, and that link is going to have a path equal to just slash. Of course, you can add anything in here. Inside of the link, we're just gonna have our logo image. So we can say image, and then in there, you can say src is equal to footer logo. The alt tag can be just something like logo. Let's save that, and let's see our footer starting to come together. Technically, we could also leave it like this, but let's add some more links. Let's add one more box below our link right in there. That box is going to have the SX equal to styles.footer.menus. And inside of there, we're gonna have a nav tag. Inside of that nav, we're gonna loop over the data. So we can say data.menuitems.map. And then there we have each one of the menu items, and we want to render something for each one. The thing that we're going to render is simply going to be a link, which is going to be a self-closing tag. This link is going to have a path. This link is going to have a path, which is going to be equal to item.path. It's also going to have a key, which is going to be equal to our index. So as the second parameter, let's grab our index. We're also going to have a label, which is going to be equal to item.label. And finally, we're going to have the styles. SX is equal to styles.footer.link. If we save that, well, if we save that, you should see an error because this here is going to be menu item, not menu items plural. So if we fix that typo and scroll down, you should now see all the links appear at the bottom. Finally, what would a website be without a little copyright notice? So just below this box, let's create a text element. This text is going to have the SX equal to styles.footer.copyright. We can say copyright, and then we can do something like by. And let's add a dynamic block of code and say new date. That gives us the date object. But we can call the .getFullYear. That's going to give us a current year. And finally, at the end, you can enter your company name. Great. If we save that, you should see that copyright appear at the bottom. Our footer is done. And with it, our entire website is now completely done. Let's check it out one more time from top to bottom, and then we're going to deploy it using Hostinger. So if we keep scrolling down, we can see top quality digital products to explore. We have our image and the SVGs behind. We have the best features of our product, as well as the services that we offer. Then we have the clickable iframe where you can play a video. Scrolling more down, we have more amazing features. Scrolling down, we have one more core feature as well as the Get Started button. Going down even further, if the user didn't yet understand your product, you can explain it right there in 4 easy steps. Moving forwards, we have our pricing plans, monthly as well as the annual. We have the team of people that work in our company, as well as the testimonial section where some people left some nice reviews. Finally, we have a footer and we are ready to get started. So this is a website that you built using Next.js. If I refresh, you can see that it is extremely fast. And now we're going to deploy it. So what are the steps that we need to take to deploy our website? Well, first, we're going to go back to our code. And inside of here, we're going to close all the files and open up just package.json. Our package.json is right in here. And let's go to the scripts portion. Right in here, you can see that I've prepared for you a build script. Usually in here, you can see just next build, but I've added next build and next export. This export part is going to take the entire code base and then put it in a nice folder that you can then drag and drop and deploy anywhere. So to build out our application, let's stop it from running by pressing Ctrl+C and then Y. And finally, you can simply run npm run build. This is going to take a minute and then we'll be right back. Once our terminal is done running, you should see that on the right-hand side, we have one extra folder, and that is the out folder. In here, we have our entire website bundled up in static assets with our index.html page. This is different from React because all the content is exactly in here in this index.html. That means that it's going to be easier for website crawlers to find your content and index it higher on Google. You can deploy this website with some of the free hosting providers, but in this case, since speed really matters and this is a business website, we're going to be using Hostinger for the speed that it provides. The faster the website loads, the higher is it gonna rank on Google and other search engines. In my case, I've decided to take the jsmastery.net domain name as well as the hosting. Now I'm gonna show you how we can set up our hosting and display our Next.js website. First thing that we have to do is go to hosting and then manage. Right inside of here, we're gonna scroll down and we're gonna go to file manager. That's going to open up a dashboard and then you can go under this public HTML. Inside of here, you'll see that we have a default PHP site. You can delete that. Once you've deleted this file, you can open your Visual Studio Code, find the out folder and then reveal in File Explorer. Then you can open it out and simply drag and drop all the files from that folder. There we go. You can click upload. And that's going to be it. It is going to take just a minute. While that is doing its thing, let's open up our Visual Studio Code one last time. And I want to go to our package.json. In this project, we've used next build and next export. And this is great for static websites. This Next.js is a single page application without any dynamic things happening to it. But sometimes you're going to encounter Next.js websites that are not simply statically rendered. They have some dynamic parts. In that case, our current deployment process is not going to work and you have to host it differently. I just wanted to point that out. With that said, let's go back to Hostinger and let's wait for our process to be finished. You might see one error appear, but don't worry about that. If you go to your domain, in my case, it's going to be javascriptmastery.net. In your case, it might be a dummy domain or something different. You should see our website live and ready. Here it is, hosted under a special domain. Now, if I copy this and if I paste it and go ahead and click enter, as you can see, it's instantaneous. This website is extremely fast, and that's partially to Next.js and most importantly to Hostinger's hosting. You can see that our website doesn't currently have SSL, so let's go back to hosting, search for SSL, and just click it. There you can see that it failed, so we just have to click reinstall. And in a few moments, our SSL certificate should be ready and our website is going to be HTTPS hosted. Take a look at that. There's this little lock and our connection is secure. Again, the process is extremely easy and I cannot recommend Hostinger enough. With that said, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, I hope you learned something new, and I hope that you're going to use this website for your own purposes, of course after you change some details that make sense to you. YouTube algorithm is being strict lately, so a like, a comment, and subscribe would definitely mean a lot. Thank you so much for watching, see you in the next one, and until then, have a wonderful day.